I asked my Apache neighbor to be my fake girlfriend when I ran into my ex. She didn't hesitate. David had always loved walking through the local park in the late afternoons. There was something peaceful about the way the sun slowly dipped behind the trees, painting everything with golden light. Psst. The soft sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the occasional laughter of children playing in the distance, and the distant barking of dogs always made him feel calm. Today, though, he could barely enjoy any of it. His mind was racing, and his heart kept beating a little too fast, all because of something, or rather, someone, he had never expected to see here. He rounded a familiar bend in the path, his eyes scanning the area as he tried to lose himself in the scenery, when suddenly he froze. There she was, Rachel, his ex, the woman he had dated for nearly 2 years, and the one who had ended things so abruptly that he was still not sure how to fully move on. She was standing near a small fountain, chatting with a friend, laughing in that way that had always made him feel both drawn to her and nervous at the same time. Seeing her here in his favorite park, out of all places, made him feel a mixture of panic and regret. David's first instinct was to turn around and leave. He could walk away, keep his dignity intact, and pretend he had not noticed her. But a small, stubborn part of him refused to let that happen. He didn't want to seem small or hurt or uncertain. Brash. And, as much as he hated to admit it, he didn't want to face her without some sort of plan. After all, he had to show her, or maybe even himself, that he had moved on, that he was confident, that he was no longer the man who had felt broken when she left. As he hesitated on the path, trying to figure out what to do, he noticed someone approaching from the opposite direction. It was Elena, his neighbor, the young Apache woman who had recently moved in next door. She was carrying a small bag of groceries, her long dark hair catching the sunlight, and there was a familiar brightness in her eyes as she smiled at him. David had always liked Elena's energy. She was confident, kind, and never seemed to be afraid of anything. Somehow, just seeing her made him feel a little braver. An idea, sudden and impulsive, sparked in his mind. What if he asked her for a favor? A crazy, bold, slightly ridiculous favor, but one that could solve his problem in the most perfect way. He took a deep breath and hurried toward her, feeling both nervous and hopeful.
"Hey, Elena," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. She looked up from her groceries, her expression curious but friendly.
Hey, David, everything okay? She asked, tilting her head slightly. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to just go for it. I need a huge favor, he said quickly, almost in a rush. I know this sounds strange, but I just ran into my ex, Rachel, and I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. Brad, just for a few minutes. It's really important. Elena raised an eyebrow but didn't immediately say no. She was quiet for a moment, considering him, then smiled. Wow, okay. That's bold, she said. I can do it. David felt a wave of relief wash over him. He couldn't believe how easily she had agreed. Most people would hesitate or think it was too weird or outright refuse. But Elena, she had just smiled, as if this was an adventure waiting to happen, and agreed without a second thought. As they walked toward where Rachel was standing, David could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to calm himself, reminding himself to act natural, to follow Elena's lead. And Elena, with her calm and confident demeanor, seemed to instinctively know how to help him. She linked her arm through his and gave him a reassuring smile. Breaths, she whispered. We've got this. Breaths. David nodded, trying to mimic her confidence. Together they approached the fountain, and Elena leaned slightly closer, laughing at something Rachel had said to her friend. David felt a strange mixture of amusement and nervousness. He couldn't believe he was actually doing this, pretending to have a girlfriend, standing here in front of his ex and hoping she would be impressed or at least intimidated. Rachel noticed them almost immediately. Her eyes flickered toward David, then widened slightly as she took in Elena walking with him, smiling as if they were truly a couple. David could see the surprise on her face, and a small, guilty part of him felt pleased. But more than that, he felt a rush of gratitude toward Elena. She had made this moment so easy, so natural that it almost felt real, even to him. As they walked past Rachel, Elena leaned in slightly and whispered a playful remark that made David laugh quietly. For the first time in a long time, he felt calm. The panic, the anxiety, the fear of looking foolish, it all melted away in her presence. Breath. She had a way of making things feel simple, of turning a stressful, awkward moment into something manageable, even fun. After they passed Rachel, David exhaled deeply, feeling like he had just survived something monumental. "Thank you," he said genuinely. "I don't know how I would have done that without you." This passed. "It wasn't that hard. You just needed a little backup," she said. But David could tell from the way she looked at him that she had enjoyed the little adventure just as much as he had.
As they continued walking, their conversation turned lighter.
They joked about the ridiculousness of the situation, laughed at David's over-the-top nervousness, and shared little stories from their day.
David realized something important. This wasn't just about avoiding an awkward encounter with his ex.
This was the beginning of a connection, a shared moment that neither of them would forget. By the time they reached the edge of the park, David felt a strange mix of relief and excitement. What had started as a desperate attempt to save face had turned into something unexpectedly wonderful. Elena, with her courage, humor, and easy confidence, had not only helped him in the moment but had also shown him a glimpse of the kind of person she was. And David, for the first time in a long time, felt that maybe there was a little hope for something new, something real in his life.
He knew that this encounter would stay with him, not because of his ex, not because of embarrassment or awkwardness, but because of Elena.
Her willingness to step in, her fearlessness, and the way she had made the impossible feel easy had left an impression that would not fade quickly. For David, that late afternoon walk through the park had become more than a routine. It had become a turning point, a moment of clarity, and a story he would remember for years. David had barely caught his breath from the unexpected encounter in the park when he realized he had to act fast. His mind was racing with questions and what-ifs. What if Rachel noticed me alone and started asking questions? What if I stumbled over my words? The more he thought about it, the more he realized he needed a plan. Something simple, something believable, something that could make him look confident instead of flustered.
And that was when he remembered Elena, his neighbor.
Elena had always struck him as someone fearless, someone who seemed to glide through life without hesitation. She had moved into the apartment next door only a few months ago, but she had already made an impression on everyone in the building.
Always cheerful, quick to laugh, and unapologetically bold. She carried herself in a way that made David feel both calm and slightly envious. He knew that if anyone could help him, it was her.
Taking a deep breath, David jogged toward her as she walked down the sidewalk with a bag of groceries balanced carefully in her arms.
"Hey, Elena!" he called, trying to sound casual even though his chest felt like it was going to burst. She looked up, and the warm smile that always made David's heart beat a little faster appeared instantly.
David? Hey, are you okay?
"You look nervous," she said, tilting her head slightly as she set the grocery bag down on a nearby bench. But David hesitated for a moment, suddenly self-conscious. But then he blurted it out, almost before he had a chance to think twice. "I need a huge favor." he said, pacing slightly. It's kind of crazy, but I just ran into my ex in the park, and I don't want her to think I'm single and miserable.
Could you, pretend to be my girlfriend for a few minutes?
Elena raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into an amused smile.
Wait, what?
You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?
Right here? In front of your ex? David nodded quickly, his words tumbling out in a rush. Yes, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I didn't know who else to ask.
Please, Elena, I promise it will be quick.
I just need her to think I've moved on, that I'm happy, that I'm not a mess. Duh. For a moment, Elena was silent, studying him carefully. Then, to his relief, she laughed. Wow, that's bold. I mean, really bold. And slightly terrifying, she said, shaking her head. But, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. David felt a wave of gratitude and relief. Really? You'll do it. Thank you so much, he exclaimed. He could feel his heart slowing slightly, the tension in his chest easing. Elena's calm confidence seemed to radiate over him, and he realized he had never felt more relieved to have someone by his side. Relax, she said, looping her arm through his. We'll make this look real. Just follow my lead! As they approached the park, David's nervousness began to return. What if Rachel noticed something fake in their interactions? What if he made a fool of himself? Elena, sensing his tension, squeezed his arm gently and whispered, "Just smile, act natural, and pretend you're proud to be with me. But you'll do fine." Her words had an unexpected effect. David found himself straightening his shoulders and taking a deep breath. Elena's calmness, combined with her natural charisma, gave him a confidence he didn't even know he had. They rounded a bend and saw Rachel again, standing near the fountain with her friend. David could feel his stomach tighten, but he also noticed Elena smiling softly, giving him a reassuring look. "Ready?" she whispered. He nodded. "Ready," he said, though he was anything but sure. Elena stepped in close, linking her arm with his, and they approached Rachel together. David was amazed at how natural Elena made it all look. She laughed lightly at something Rachel's friend had said, nudging David playfully as if they were truly a couple. David followed her lead, smiling and nodding, though inside he was still nervous. Rachel's eyes widened as she saw them approaching. Breaths. David could see the recognition, the surprise, and maybe even a flicker of jealousy in her expression. His heart beat faster, not from anxiety, but from the relief that their plan seemed to be working. Elena whispered something humorous about their weekend plans in his ear, making him chuckle quietly. He couldn't believe how well she was handling this, and he silently thanked her for stepping in without hesitation. The interaction felt almost like a dance. Elena led with subtle gestures, small touches, and casual conversation, while David followed, trying to act confident and relaxed. He noticed how she effortlessly turned their pretend relationship into something that seemed real, even for a brief moment. Every glance, every laugh, every gesture made it believable. For David, it was a revelation. This wasn't just acting, it was a lesson in confidence and presence, and he was lucky to have her guiding him. Once they had passed Rachel, David exhaled so deeply that he thought he might collapse. I don't even know how to thank you," he said, still catching his breath. "That was incredible. You made it look so real. I don't know what I would have done without you." Elena shrugged lightly, her playful smile never leaving her face. "It wasn't that hard. You just needed someone to help you out. Plus, I had fun, she said. David couldn't help but laugh, realizing that she had turned a stressful, awkward moment into a shared adventure.
As they walked toward a quiet bench, Elena continued to tease him gently. Honestly, you were so nervous I thought you might run the other way, she said, shaking her head.
But you handled it better than I expected. David smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. He realized he had underestimated Elena. Her willingness to help, her quick thinking, and her fearlessness were impressive, yes, but there was something more. There was kindness, patience, and a sense of humor that made her not only a great neighbor, but someone he genuinely enjoyed being around. They sat down on the bench for a moment, catching their breath and letting the adrenaline fade. David felt a strange mix of relief, excitement, and curiosity. What had started as a desperate attempt to save face had become a shared experience, one that made him feel connected to someone new in a way he hadn't expected. So, does this mean we're officially a fake couple now? David joked lightly, trying to lighten the mood. Bray. Elena laughed, shaking her head. I don't know about official, but I'd say we make a pretty convincing team, she replied. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, and David felt a surprising sense of joy at the moment. For the first time that day, David felt a sense of ease. Fear of embarrassment, the worry about Rachel's judgment, and the pressure of pretending to be someone he wasn't. All of it seemed manageable now. Elena had not only helped him navigate an awkward encounter, but had also shown him how confidence and presence could change the way he felt about himself in stressful situations.
As they got up to leave the park, David felt grateful and unexpectedly inspired.
The encounter with Rachel, which had started as a moment of panic, had turned into an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect with someone truly remarkable. Elena had stepped into a moment of uncertainty with courage, humor, and grace, and David realized that he wanted to spend more time with her, not just as a neighbor, but as someone who had become unexpectedly important in his life. Walking home side by side, their conversation flowed easily. They shared small stories about their lives, laughed at minor embarrassments, and talked about the funny unpredictability of the day. David noticed how natural it felt to be around her, how easy it was to talk and joke, and just exist in the moment, without fear or judgment. The park, which had seemed tense and intimidating only moments before, now felt like the place where something new had begun. A new friendship, perhaps even the start of something deeper. By the time they reached the edge of their neighborhood, David knew he would never forget this day. It was more than just a story about a pretend girlfriend or an awkward encounter with an ex. It was a story about courage, kindness, and the unexpected ways people could enter your life when you least expected it. Elena had changed what could have been a stressful, embarrassing situation into something memorable, meaningful, and even fun. Brat and David, for the first time in a long time, felt hopeful. Not just about the moment, but about the future and the people who could unexpectedly make it brighter. David could feel his palms getting slightly sweaty as he and Elena approached the fountain. Rachel was still there, laughing at something her friend had said, her eyes scanning the surroundings. David's heart began to race, not with fear exactly, but with a strange mix of nerves and anticipation. He wasn't used to situations like this, where every step and glance had to feel natural, convincing, and unforced. He glanced at Elena, who was walking beside him with that calm, confident smile that always seemed effortless. Just follow my lead, she whispered softly, looping her arm through his. The gesture was casual, yet it made David's chest tighten. He had never been in such close proximity with someone in a pretend intimate way before, and it felt oddly thrilling.
Elena gave him a playful nudge with her elbow, as if to reassure him, and David felt a small laugh escape him, despite his nerves.
As they got closer, Rachel finally noticed them. Her eyes widened in surprise, scanning from David to Elena. David could almost read her thoughts. Wait, is he with her? He straightened his back and smiled, following Elena's lead. She leaned slightly toward him, laughing softly at something he had said, a completely fabricated story about a hike they had supposedly taken together the previous weekend. It was absurd, but Elena told it with such conviction that it sounded believable. Rachel blinked a few times, her expression mixing surprise with a hint of curiosity. David could feel a small pang of satisfaction. Just a few minutes ago, he had felt nervous, anxious, and unsure of how to face her. Now he felt in control, though he owed it all to Elena. She was effortlessly taking the lead, and he could only follow, doing his best to act natural and relaxed. David, it's been a while, Rachel said finally, her voice light but with a hint of hesitation. I didn't expect to see you here.
Yes, it has been a while, David replied, keeping his tone casual.
He shot a glance at Elena, who was smiling warmly and nodding as if to confirm their story. She leaned slightly into him, resting her head on his shoulder, just enough to make their relationship seem believable, and David felt a rush of gratitude. Her actions were perfect, subtle, and completely natural, and they made the fabricated scenario feel real. Rachel looked at Elena, and David could see her momentarily puzzled. And you are? She asked, raising an eyebrow slightly. This is Elena, David said smoothly, his voice more confident than he felt. We've been spending a lot of time together lately. She's amazing. He smiled at Elena, letting his tone suggest admiration and affection. Elena laughed softly, the kind of laugh that made David's heart skip a beat.
David's exaggerating, she said, teasing him lightly. But yes, we've been on a few adventures together. He's not as adventurous as he likes to claim, though. David chuckled, playing along, and Rachel's eyes flicked between them.
David could tell she was trying to figure out if this was real, and that was exactly what he wanted, to make her think he had moved on, that he was confident and happy, and that he wasn't going to crumble under her gaze. The three of them stood there for a few more moments exchanging small talk. Elena guided the conversation effortlessly, asking David questions and responding with humor and warmth. Every laugh, every glance, every small touch was perfectly timed. David felt a strange sense of pride and relief. He couldn't believe how natural it all felt, despite being completely fabricated. At one point, Rachel mentioned an upcoming community event, and David tried to act casual, shrugging and smiling. Elena jumped in immediately. Actually, David and I are planning to go together. We thought it would be fun to try something new and meet people, she said, her tone confident and matter-of-fact. David nodded, smiling along. The confidence in her voice made him feel like he could actually be a little more relaxed, even though his stomach still twisted with nervous energy. Rachel looked slightly taken aback, but David could see the hint of a smile forming on her lips. She was clearly impressed, or at least surprised, by how composed he seemed. As they continued to chat, Elena leaned closer to David, whispering playful remarks in his ear that made him stifle small laughs. Her words were light-hearted, teasing, and surprisingly comforting. David realized that despite the awkwardness of the situation, he was starting to enjoy himself. There was something exciting about navigating this challenge with someone who clearly had his back, someone who could turn a potentially embarrassing situation into something manageable and even fun. After a few more minutes of casual conversation, Rachel said she had to leave, but she gave David a lingering glance before walking away with her friend. David exhaled, finally allowing himself to relax. The tension in his body melted as soon as she disappeared from sight, and he couldn't stop himself from smiling at Elena. That was incredible, he said, his voice full of awe. You made all of that look so real, I don't even know how to thank you. Elena laughed, shaking her head.
It wasn't that hard. You just needed someone to give you confidence.
And you handled yourself better than you think. Honestly, I think you did most of the work.
David shook his head, feeling a mix of relief and admiration. No way. Perhaps I would have completely frozen without you. You were amazing out there. You turned what could have been an embarrassing disaster into something I can actually laugh about now. They walked a little further down the park path, letting the adrenaline fade and the calm afternoon surround them. David couldn't help but feel a growing sense of appreciation for Elena. Despair, her fearlessness, her quick thinking, and her natural charm were remarkable. But beyond that, there was something in the way she interacted with him, supportive, understanding, and playful, that made him feel genuinely comfortable.
So, Elena said after a moment, does this mean we're officially a fake couple now? She teased, nudging him lightly.
David laughed. I don't know about officially, but I think we make a pretty convincing team, he replied. He realized that the experience had shifted something inside him. What had started as a desperate attempt to save face had become an opportunity to connect with someone new in a meaningful way. Elena smiled, her eyes sparkling. Convincing enough, I'd say. Maybe next time you need to impress someone, we can do it again, she joked, though there was a playful sincerity in her tone. David nodded, feeling an unexpected warmth in his chest. He realized that he had underestimated her, not just her boldness, but her ability to navigate tricky situations with grace and humor. And more than that, he realized that he genuinely enjoyed spending time with her. The fake scenario had created a real connection, one that felt surprisingly natural despite its artificial beginnings. As they continued walking through the park, they started sharing little stories about themselves, laughing at minor embarrassments and talking about their favorite spots in the city. David felt lighter than he had in weeks, even months. The anxiety he had felt when he first saw Rachel had completely vanished, replaced by a sense of excitement and curiosity. By the time they reached the edge of the park, David realized something important. This encounter, which had started as a moment of panic, had turned into something unexpected and meaningful. Elena had not only helped him navigate a difficult situation, but she had also shown him a new perspective on confidence, courage, and connection. What a day, David said quietly, more to himself than to Elena.
I didn't expect it to turn out like this. Elena smiled, bumping him gently with her shoulder.
Life's full of surprises. Sometimes the people who step into your life when you least expect it end up making the biggest difference, she said. David nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and admiration. He knew that this day would stay with him, not because of the awkwardness of running into his ex, but because of Elena. Her boldness, her kindness, and her effortless charm had made a stressful situation not only manageable, but memorable. And for David, that was something he would never forget. As they walked back toward their neighborhood, side by side, David felt a sense of hope and excitement he hadn't felt in a long time. The fake girlfriend plan had worked perfectly, but more importantly, it had introduced him to someone extraordinary. Someone who was fearless, kind, playful, and genuinely remarkable. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like the future might hold something unexpectedly wonderful. After Rachel walked away, David felt an odd mixture of relief, exhilaration, and curiosity. The initial panic he had felt had completely faded, replaced by a surprising sense of calm. Elena had handled everything so naturally, so effortlessly, that it almost didn't feel like they had been pretending at all. Her playful smiles, gentle nudges, and confident presence had turned a potentially stressful situation into a shared adventure. As they walked down the path away from the fountain, David realized he hadn't even taken a moment to breathe properly until now. Psst. Wow, he said quietly, exhaling deeply.
That
Went better than I could have imagined. Better than imagined. I think it went perfectly. You handled yourself well, even if you think you didn't. David smiled, shaking his head. I don't know. I was so nervous at first. I thought I might say something completely stupid or trip over my words. But having you there made everything feel easier. You're really good at this!
Elena's eyes twinkled with amusement. Good at what?
Pretending to be your girlfriend? That's kind of fun to hear.
I mean, most people wouldn't even ask. David chuckled, feeling warmth spread through him.
I wouldn't have asked anyone else. You just made it feel natural.
I don't know how to explain it. You have this energy that makes people feel comfortable and confident.
Elena shrugged, smiling. Maybe.
Or maybe I just enjoy helping people out of tricky situations.
They continued walking in silence for a few minutes, letting the sounds of the park surround them. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children, the occasional bark of a dog. It all felt calm and grounding after the rush of adrenaline. David found himself watching Elena more closely, noticing small things he hadn't paid attention to before. The way she carried herself with ease, the subtle confidence in her movements, the softness in her voice when she laughed or spoke kindly. He realized he had underestimated her before.
You know, Elena said suddenly, breaking the silence, I have to admit.
Rasp.
That was kind of fun. I didn't expect it to be this enjoyable.
Psst. Usually situations like that are awkward, stressful, or just uncomfortable. But today, it felt different. Baskets. David nodded, smiling. I feel the same way. I thought I would be embarrassed the whole time, but I don't know. It felt good to have someone there with me. Someone who made me feel like I wasn't alone in it.
Elena laughed softly. I guess we make a pretty good team then.
Not that I'd say yes to being a fake girlfriend for anyone else, but for you, it worked. David laughed along, feeling a little lighter than he had in weeks. The tension of running into his ex, the anxiety of having to act confident, it all seemed to fade when he was with Elena. There was an ease in her presence, a way of making him feel calm, playful, and even a little adventurous. As they walked, their conversation shifted naturally from the fake encounter to other topics. They began sharing small stories from their lives, little anecdotes that were both funny and revealing. David learned about Elena's childhood growing up in her Apache community, her favorite places to visit, and her love for hiking in nature. But she, in turn, listened attentively as David talked about his own experiences, his work, and the small challenges and joys of his everyday life. It amazed him how easily the conversation flowed. He hadn't expected to feel this comfortable with someone he had only known casually as a neighbor. But Elena had a way of drawing people in, making them feel safe, valued, and genuinely understood. David found himself laughing more than he had in months, sharing stories he had never told anyone else and feeling a deep connection that surprised him.
You're a good listener, he said at one point, glancing at her.
Most people just nod or try to jump in with their own stories. But you actually listen. Elena smiled softly. I try. Everyone has a story, right? And sometimes you just need someone to hear it without judgment. That's what I think, at least. David nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He realized that beyond the thrill of the fake girlfriend scenario, beyond the adrenaline and nerves, there was something genuinely meaningful happening. This wasn't just a shared joke or a temporary favor. This was a connection built on trust, laughter, and the small moments of authenticity that came naturally between them. They found a quiet bench under a large oak tree and decided to sit for a while. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the branches, casting warm patterns on the ground. David felt a peacefulness he hadn't felt in a long time. He looked at Elena, noticing the way her hair caught the sunlight, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, and the calm confidence in her posture.
You know, he said softly, I didn't expect today to turn out like this.
I thought it would just be a stressful, awkward encounter, and then I'd go home feeling embarrassed. But it's been, really nice. Better than I could have imagined.
Elena tilted her head, smiling. I'm glad to hear that.
Britt. I had fun too. It's funny how things work out sometimes. Life throws you a situation you don't want to deal with, and then you meet someone who makes it unexpectedly good. David nodded, feeling a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The encounter with Rachel had initially brought tension and worry, but Elena had turned it into something else entirely: breath. Her presence, her humor, her confidence, and her kindness had made the day memorable in the best possible way. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, watching people walk by, enjoying the quiet of the park and letting the warmth of the late afternoon sun settle around them. Brace. David felt a sense of ease he hadn't felt in years. He realized that the connection he was forming with Elena wasn't based on pretense or obligation. It was genuine, spontaneous, and completely unexpected. So, Elena said finally, breaking the silence, do you think we'll have more adventures like this? Not pretending, of course, but just des ballets, Don-haired. David smiled, feeling a thrill of excitement. I'd like that, he said honestly. I never expected today to turn into this. But now, I feel like I want to spend more time with you, to see where things go, to explore this connection we've started. Elena laughed softly, bumping him gently with her shoulder.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Life's too short to let unexpected moments pass without enjoying them, right? David nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude and anticipation.
He realized that today, a day that had begun with anxiety and fear, had turned into something transformative. He had learned about courage, confidence, and the unexpected ways connections could form. Breaths. And most importantly, he had met someone extraordinary, someone who could turn a potentially stressful moment into a shared adventure, laughter, and genuine understanding. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the park, David and Elena stood up, stretching and preparing to head home. The warmth of the day, the comfort of their conversation, and the spark of connection between them lingered in the air. David knew that this was more than just a day in the park. It was a turning point, a moment where a fake situation had unexpectedly led to something real and meaningful. Britt. Walking back toward their neighborhood, side by side, they continued talking, laughing, and sharing small stories. The connection they had formed was growing stronger with every word, every glance, every shared smile. David realized that sometimes life's most unexpected encounters, like running into an ex or asking a neighbor for a crazy favor, could lead to the most genuine and lasting relationships. By the time they reached the edge of the neighborhood, David felt a deep sense of contentment and anticipation. The day had started with anxiety, but it ended with laughter, connection, and the realization that sometimes the boldest actions led to the most meaningful experiences. Elena had shown him that courage, kindness, and authenticity could turn even a stressful situation into something extraordinary. And as they parted ways, promising to meet again soon, David felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. He knew that this day, this encounter, and this unexpected friendship, perhaps even something more, would stay with him forever.
It was the start of a connection he never expected but had come to value more than anything.
After that unforgettable day in the park, David found himself thinking about Elena more than he expected. What had started as a small, impulsive favor, asking his neighbor to pretend to be his girlfriend, had unexpectedly turned into something deeper. Every time he remembered how confident, playful, and kind she had been, he felt a warm, thrilling feeling in his chest. It was confusing at first, because he hadn't anticipated any kind of real connection from a moment that was supposed to be fake. But now he realized that what had started as a pretense had grown into genuine admiration, curiosity, and something that could perhaps become love. The next day, David found himself looking for excuses to see her again. He walked past her apartment with a casual wave, wondering if it was too soon to text her. But then he remembered her boldness, her playful smile, and the way she had laughed without hesitation at the awkward situation. Maybe she wouldn't mind. So, with a deep breath, he sent a simple text. "Hey, thanks again for yesterday. Do you want to grab coffee sometime?"
Elena replied within minutes. Sure, I know a place nearby that has the best pastries.
Saturday? David grinned, feeling a thrill he hadn't felt in years. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. It wasn't just the coffee or pastries, though he loved those. It was the chance to spend time with her, to learn more about her, and to continue the connection they had started in the park. When Saturday arrived, David was nervous, but in a different way. This wasn't a fake scenario anymore. This was real, and he didn't want to mess it up. He walked to the small cafe where Elena had suggested meeting, and there she was, waiting outside, casually leaning against the wall with that same confident, radiant smile that had captivated him the day before.
She waved and his heart leaped. "Hey," he called, smiling as he approached.
"Hey yourself," she said, linking her arm with his for a moment as they walked inside. David felt a surge of warmth at the casual touch. It wasn't pretend anymore. It felt natural. They ordered their drinks and pastries and found a quiet corner to sit. Conversation flowed easily, as it had in the park. They talked about everything and nothing. Favorite movies, childhood memories, funny stories from school, and dreams for the future. Breaths. David found himself laughing more freely than he had in a long time. Elena's presence was comforting yet exciting. She had this rare ability to make him feel completely at ease, while also sparking a sense of curiosity and admiration in him.
At one point, David realized he had been talking about his own life for a while, and he turned the conversation toward her.
"I realized I don't know much about your family or what growing up in your community was like," he said. Elena's face softened and she leaned back, taking a sip of her coffee. "Well, I grew up in the Apache community near the mountains. My family was always close, and I learned a lot from my grandparents about our traditions and stories. I loved it. But I also wanted to see the world outside my small town. That's part of why I moved here." David listened intently, fascinated by her stories. He noticed the pride and warmth in her voice as she spoke, and he felt privileged that she was sharing this part of herself with him.
That sounds incredible,
he said sincerely. "I'd love to hear more about the stories your grandparents told. Maybe you could tell me one sometime?"
Elena smiled, the kind of smile that made him feel light and happy.
"I'd like that," she said. "Some of the stories are funny, some are serious, but they're all part of who I am. And now, I guess I'm part of your story too,"
she added playfully, nudging his shoulder. David laughed, feeling his chest warm at her words.
She had a way of making everything feel personal, meaningful, and genuine. He realized that what had started as a fake scenario in the park had become a real bond, something neither of them had expected but something both clearly valued. Over the next few weeks, David and Elena began spending more time together. They explored the city, went on hikes, tried new restaurants, and even went to local events. But each moment felt natural, easy, and fun. They didn't need to pretend anymore. Their interactions were genuine, filled with laughter, shared experiences, and quiet, comfortable moments that spoke volumes without words. David found himself thinking about her constantly, not in an obsessive way, but in a way that made him smile at random moments of his day. He appreciated her courage, her kindness, and the way she made him feel both confident and at ease. Elena, for her part, seemed equally drawn to him. She admired his honesty, his humor, and the small, thoughtful gestures he made that showed he cared. Their connection grew slowly but steadily, built on trust, shared experiences, and the authenticity that had first emerged during that crazy day in the park. One evening, after a long hike through the nearby trails, they sat on a large rock overlooking the valley below, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. David felt a quiet, reflective mood settle over him. He looked at Elena, the wind gently moving her hair, and realized just how much she had become a part of his life in such a short time.
You know, he said softly, I never expected yesterday or the day before that in the park to turn into this.
I mean, I didn't even know what I was asking when I asked you to pretend to be my girlfriend. But now I'm really glad I did. Elena turned to him, her eyes sparkling in the fading sunlight.
Me too, she said. It was crazy and it was fun, and honestly, it brought us together.
I'm glad you asked, even if it was a little ridiculous.
David smiled, feeling a rush of warmth.
Ridiculous, yes.
But perfect too, he said. Because now I realize I want to spend more time with you. Not as a joke, not as a favor, but as something real. If you'll let me. Disprey. Elena's smile softened, and she reached out, taking his hand gently.
I'd like that too, she said.
I was hoping you'd say that.
In that moment, David felt a sense of joy and completeness he hadn't felt in a long time. The fake scenario, the panic, the nerves, they all seemed distant now.
What mattered was the connection they had built, the laughter they had shared, and the understanding that had grown between them. They didn't need pretense anymore. They had found something real, something meaningful, something worth nurturing. Over the following months, their relationship blossomed naturally. They spent weekends exploring new trails, trying new recipes together, attending cultural events, and laughing at the small absurdities of life. Every encounter strengthened their bond. David realized that the person he had thought he only knew as a neighbor had become his closest confidant, someone who understood him better than he had expected, and someone who brought light and warmth into his life. Elena's influence on David went beyond their relationship. Her courage, her authenticity, and her ability to embrace life with humor and confidence inspired him to approach challenges differently. He became more patient, more thoughtful, and more willing to take small risks in his own life. She had transformed a stressful moment into a lasting connection that was changing him in ways he hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as they sat in the park where it all began, David looked at Elena with gratitude and affection. "It's funny," he said, smiling. "A day that started with panic, nerves, and pretending turned into one of the best moments of my life. I never expected it to lead to this." Elena laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Life's full of surprises," she said. "Sometimes the things you think are the hardest or the most awkward end up being the best. You just have to let them happen." David nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. He realized that the fake girlfriend scenario had been a turning point, not just in how he faced his ex, but in how he opened himself to connection, trust, and love.
And it had all started with Elena, someone who had stepped into his life with courage, kindness, and a playful heart.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and purple, David and Elena sat quietly, enjoying the peace, the beauty, and the profound bond they had created. What had begun as a desperate, awkward plan had blossomed into a genuine friendship, trust, and love that neither of them had expected, but both now cherished. David realized that life often worked in unexpected ways. A single, bold action, asking for a favor from a fearless, kind-hearted neighbor, had led him to someone extraordinary. Elena had shown him the power of courage, authenticity, and shared laughter. And in return, he had discovered a connection that filled his life with warmth, joy, and hope for the future. And so, what had begun as a fake scenario became something real, meaningful, and lasting. David knew that no matter what challenges or surprises life would bring, he had found someone remarkable by his side. Someone who had turned a moment of fear into a journey of discovery, laughter, and love.